Imagine being born into a family where, before you even learn to read, you already know what your life's work is going to be. It's not a choice. It's an inheritance. It's blood running through your veins alongside decades, sometimes centuries of tradition. While children in other parts of the world dream of being astronauts, soccer players, or YouTubers, in the countryside of Mexico, there's a boy who, at 5 or 6 years old, already knows exactly what he's going to do with his life. He's going to follow in the footsteps of his father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather. And this profession isn't found in any college curriculum, has no diploma, no MBA. It's learned in the fields, under the scorching sun, with hands full of calluses and a mind full of respect for something much bigger than himself. This profession is called Jimador. And if you've never heard that name before, get ready, because the story behind it is about to change the way you look at a simple bottle of tequila. Let's go back in time. We're talking about a tradition born more than 300 years ago, in the fields of Jalisco, Mexico, in the region where the blue agave plant grows. This plant is rugged, thorny, stubborn. It doesn't give up what's valuable inside it easily. It takes between 6 and 10 years to mature. 10 years, let that sink in. An entire decade of sun, rain, drought, and care just so a single plant is ready to be harvested. And that's where the Jimador comes in, the man who dedicates his entire life to understanding this plant like no one else. The Jimador's work is both brutal and delicate at the same time. He has to cut the thorny leaves of the agave using a tool called a COA, a kind of sharp blade on a long handle, until he reaches the heart of the plant, the piña, which can weigh more than 40 kilos. And here's the secret that makes all the difference. There's no machine in the world capable of doing this job with the same precision as an experienced Jimador. Every cut has to be exact. Cut too much, and you ruin the piña. Cut too little, and you leave leaf material that will make the tequila bitter. He has to know, just by looking, whether that specific plant has reached the ideal point of maturity. And that knowledge doesn't come from any book. It comes from observation, from repetition, from entire generations passing down that wisdom from father to son, mouth to mouth, hand to hand, in the middle of the agave fields. Think about this with me. While the modern world races after automation, artificial intelligence, robots doing man's work, there's a billion-dollar industry, the tequila industry, that depends entirely on the manual wisdom of Mexican families who have been doing this for centuries. This isn't cheap romanticism, this is fact. Major tequila brands, the ones you see in any bar around the world, still depend on Jimadors to harvest the agave today. Because the truth is simple. No robot has the trained eye of a man who learned to recognize a ripe plant by watching his father do it since childhood. And that's exactly where the beauty of this story lies. In Jimador families, the teaching starts early. Very early. A boy of 7 or 8 already goes with his father to the fields, not to do heavy labor yet, but to observe, to learn the rhythm, to understand the respect one must have for the land and for the plant. Little by little, he starts picking up the COA, practicing his first cuts on simpler plants, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, being corrected by his father with patience, because the father learned the same way too, from his own grandfather. It's a chain that crosses generations without ever breaking. And don't think it's an easy job just because it's traditional. Quite the opposite. An experienced Jimador can harvest between 100 and 200 piñas a day, each weighing dozens of kilos, under a sun that in Jalisco can easily pass 35 degrees Celsius. It's extreme physical labor, it's endurance, it's discipline. Many compare a Jimador's routine to that of a high-performance athlete, except without the spotlight, without $1 million sponsorship, without fame. His recognition comes from somewhere else. It comes from the respect of his community, from the pride of carrying a last name that, in many towns in the Jalisco countryside, is already synonymous with excellence in that craft. Now here's an important reflection, and I want you to really think about this. We live in a time when everything seems disposable. Jobs change, careers change, people switch professions several times in their lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's normal, it's the world transforming. But there's something deeply powerful about a tradition that resists time. That crosses generations without losing its essence. It teaches a value that a lot of people have forgotten. The value of patience, the value of truly mastering a skill, not superficially, but deeply enough to one day teach it to your own child. And here's another detail few people know. Many of these Jimador families don't work exclusively for big commercial brands. Alongside that, they keep small, almost artisanal productions of tequilas and mezcals that never leave that region, made exactly the same way their great-grandparents made them more than 100 years ago. Without rush, without industrialization, respecting the land's own timing. For these families, tequila isn't just a drink. It's identity. It's culture. It's the way they've found to keep alive the memory of those who came before them. But like every beautiful tradition, this one also faces real threats. With the massive growth in global demand for tequila, many agave plantations have turned into giant monocultures controlled by large companies, which has put enormous pressure on traditional humidors. Some producers try to speed up the process, harvesting plants before they've reached the ideal point, or even replacing skilled labor with inexperienced workers, just to keep up with demand. And this worries the older humidors themselves, who see their profession being squeezed by a fast profit logic that goes completely against the principles that sustain this craft for centuries. Even so, the spirit endures. Still today, in towns like Tequila, Amatitan, and Arenal, in the state of Jalisco, you can find entire families whose identity is intertwined with the agave. Fathers who teach sons, sons who will one day teach grandsons, keeping alive one of the most authentic professions in the world, one most deeply tied to the land. And the most interesting part is that, even with all the modernization around them, these families don't see this work as outdated. On the contrary, many young humidors feel genuine pride in carrying on this tradition, because they understand they're part of something bigger than themselves, something that will keep existing long after they're gone. And that's where I want to leave you with a final thought, you who've watched all the way to here. We live in a generation obsessed with quick results, with shortcuts, with the magic formula for success. And then we come across a story like this, of a profession that takes 10 years just to harvest a single plant, that takes decades of practice to master a simple cut with a tool called a COA, and it makes us stop and think, are we losing, in the middle of all this rush, the value of doing something well, with time, with respect, with real dedication? Are we forgetting the value of learning something so deeply that we could one day teach it to the next generation? The humidor's profession is more than harvesting agave. It's a living reminder that there's greatness in simple things, there's wisdom in old traditions, and there's a kind of wealth that isn't measured in money, but in legacy. While the whole world chases the next big technological breakthrough, there's a man in the Mexican countryside, under the harsh Jalisco sun, COA in hand, doing exactly what his father did, what his grandfather did, what his great-grandfather did. And he does it with pride, because he knows he's not just cutting a plant. He's keeping alive a story that has crossed centuries and that, if it's up to him, will keep crossing many generations to come.